right, we're gonna make a trucker or biker style long wallet using 3 to 4 ounce natural tooling leather from Wicked and Craig. And I'm using dies, but these dies are a little bit too big for this 4-ton hand clicker press, and so I can't always get a clean punch. I usually have to go back through and cut the rest of it out with the razor blade. You wouldn't get that on a normal clicker press. But just as a little tip, you can use a round punch like this around those interior round corners, and it makes it so you're basically just making straight cuts with your blade. And then we're gonna cut out 3 pieces of this interior pocket panel. If you have the option, cut these pocket pieces out of 2 to 3 ounce leather. Sometimes it makes sense to order 2 different weights when you're making something, but if you don't have that option and you're just working with one hide, then you can always split it down. And I'm gonna use a bell skiver to split it down, but of course you can always skive by hand, it just takes a little bit longer. Then we got an ID window and the bottom pocket panel where the logo is gonna be branded. All right, so I normally paint my edges on wallets, but instead I'm using some Phoebings Pro dye, and I'm using this refillable marker to apply it. I like to just mix it up every now and then, try some new things, but basically I just apply a wet burnish, just a little bit of water and a slick down. It makes it for a much nicer surface to apply the dye, so you're not fighting with the fibers standing up. You can see a little discoloration there, but that's just water. It'll go away once it dries. It does take a couple coats though, unless you're pushing down really hard with that marker tip, but I don't like to do that because then the dye comes pouring out too fast and you could get it on the leather. Using my heat imprinter at 300 degrees for natural tooling. And then here's where I'm gonna skive down my pocket panels, because if you don't do this, then the pockets are a little bit too bulky, and when you stack them on top of each other, it just makes a brick inside the wallet. You can either just start out with 2 ounces of leather, or you can split it down. As always, you can just do it by hand using a hand skiver. Okay, I made a little template here that will help you make the tick mark so you know right where to put the adhesive. But on the one shown here in the video, those 3 straight lines in the bottom middle are marking right where you put the glue. But I updated the template, so when you download it, just know that those lines actually mark the bottom edge of the pocket panel. So you'll line the bottom edge up with those lines instead of where the glue goes. And that'll save you some time when you're trying to line it up, but I hope it doesn't add more confusion. I'm gonna head over here to the sewing machine and just lay down 1 stitch on the bottom edge of the pocket panel. And I usually don't do a back stitch on these interior pocket stitches, because the back stitch usually leaves a little bit of a lump that shows through on the top layer of leather once you overlap it. So it just looks a little bit cleaner. And now I'm just sewing up that ID window. I'm using a lot of expensive equipment to do this stuff, but that's just how I choose to do it. Almost everything in here you can do completely by hand, especially the stitching. It just takes a little longer. And then I'll just keep going with the same process on each pocket till you get down to the bottom panel. So just 1 quick stitch for each pocket. If you smooth out the adhesive after you lay a bead down, it doesn't take quite as long to dry up. You won't be wasting time. I like to bend back these pocket panels, fan them out a little bit so that they don't lay down into the glue after you've laid a bead down like that. But again, using a spatula or something to spread the glue out will save you a ton of time and definitely make it less messy. Make sure there's no gaps in between those pocket panels. That's always a pet peeve of mine, because you're really trying to create the illusion that it's just 4 layers of leather laid on top of each other. Okay, this is the stitch that if you don't reduce bulk by using lighter weight leather for the pocket panels, it'll turn out really badly on a machine. If you're hand stitching it, it'll be fine, but you're still gonna have some bulk. All right, now we're gonna do the zipper. You can buy these closed bottom zippers pre-cut at 7 inches online, but I just ordered a big batch of these in bulk that will work perfectly for this pattern, and I've got a bunch of them. So if you want to send me an email or a message and you want to order one from me, I'm happy to send some out. Anytime you're sewing next to a zipper, make sure you don't catch the zipper head on the presser foot. I screwed up and sewed the wrong side of the zipper prematurely. I was supposed to only sew this side right here, and then I sew this one after I pair it up with the back side so that the stitch comes through on the back and it creates a wall right there. I gotta have a wall because otherwise you put change in the zipper and it'll all just come falling out right here. So I'm gonna pick this stitch really quick, finish up the wallet, and then on the last step I'm gonna redo that stitch after it's paired up, and hopefully we can get the needle to land in the right holes. We got this. It's actually easier for me to make mistakes when I'm doing things one-off like this. I think it's just because when you're doing it like this, you're a little bit more off the cuff, especially when I'm filming. When I'm doing things in batch production, each step is a little bit more thought out and planned. So I'm going to lay these pieces together, hammer it down. So now I'm just using my wing divider to lay down a stitching guideline. It also lets the stitch kind of lay down into the leather a little bit, as long as you stay on that line while you're sewing. Some of you might have already noticed this, but if you were paying attention to my machine, the thread was not fed through the hole on the top of the needle bar like it's supposed to be, and that can cause some tension issues. I'm not sure how I let that happen. I guess it was just one of those kind of days for me, but luckily we came out clean and the tension actually went pretty well through the whole project. But I did fix it right before my last stitch. And here's where I'm making up for my mistake. I just had to make sure the needle went into the same holes. As long as you take it easy, it should line up pretty nicely, and in this case it did. So now I'm going to bevel the edges with number 2 Palo Santo beveler. I like these Palo Santo bevelers for wallets because it puts a really fine, smaller, round edge, whereas some of my other ones from Weaver and Tandy put a really big, round edge, which is nice for heavy-duty leather, but not this really fine stuff. So you can see it takes a couple coats, but the dyed edge actually turns out really nicely. Just make sure that you're slicking it down. You just want to treat the dye as kind of its own slicking agent, and make sure that you're slicking it down in between coats to keep things smooth. So I'm going to use these Buckle Guy hand presses to drop in some button snaps. These are line 20 brass snaps with the 12.7 millimeter cap that I got from Buckle Guy. These ones are definitely my favorite button snaps. I made some custom ones with our logo on it a while ago, but I rarely use them because they don't hold as tight as these ones. And then I've also got these 3/16 or 00 eyelets from Buckle Guy as well. This is where you're going to install the loop for the lanyard to hold on to. And then you got to fold it up and just kind of show it the way, tell the leather where it's supposed to go. And over time it's going to really settle into itself and fold up nicely. Looking pretty good. So now I'm going to cut a strap for the lanyard. I'm using some natural strap leather that I got from American Leather Direct. It seems like really good stuff. My only complaint is that I ordered it with the pasted back on the flesh side, and I don't like the paste that they use. It feels kind of flaky and kind of plasticky, and it leaves a white film on the back of the leather. So I probably wouldn't order it with the pasted flesh side again, but the leather itself is actually really nice. And then I'm going to cut out a little 9-inch piece of this high density nylon cord. I don't know exactly what to call it or where to tell you to get it. I just find it at a local supplier here in Ogden. But whatever you use, just make sure it's really strong. By the way, this is the same thing we've used for our camera straps, and it's always worked out really well. I'm going to dip the lanyard in water first, because if you don't, then the bend right here will crack the leather when it's dry. So it'll definitely help to wet it down. And I punch a little hole to feed it through, and then close it up with a double cap rivet. You can get all this hardware from Buckle Guy. I'll put a link in the description. There's a lot of different ways to make lanyards like this. I've always liked this fish hook piece of hardware from Buckle Guy because it just looks clean and unique and really easy to clip onto your belt. Then I just feed that rope through the eyelet, pull the whole lanyard through itself, and there we have it, the finished product. Thanks for watching.
Every evening when the sun goes down, I sit here in my room, and the lamplight shining on me project my lonely gloom. My